says there's no such thing as monsters? You're never quite the same after you meet your first Digimon.
When I was growing up in the late 90s, there was no such thing as the cool kid clique, or the nerd clique, or the emo clique. Basically what it came down to was you were either a Pokemon kid, a Yu-Gi-Oh kid, or a Digimon kid. But some of us, the really cool ones anyway, were an all three kind of kid. I lived in a town called Vernon in my young teen years and lived within 5 minutes of a convenience store called Hunter's, which was basically my only access to a video store. It was one of those places where the back wall was just nothing but VHS tapes and only ever one copy of anything. To make a long story short, they one day had the Digimon movie, and I must have rented that shit at least 50 times. Literally every single week, I just take it back in and renew it. It honestly blows my mind that I didn't end up destroying that tape. Speaking of the VHS tape, before we even get into the movie at all, I'd like to talk about something that always bugged me, and only people who saw this version of the movie will get what I'm on about. What in the fuck is Angela Anaconda? Look, I have never seen a single episode of this show, but I can recite this goddamn short that plays at the beginning of Digimon word for word, because I've seen it like 1,000 times now. On a DVD, you can easily just skip it, but on the VHS copy, you'd have to get up and fast forward to skip it, and who the hell wants to do that? This show always creeped me out, man. Their faces, I don't know, it's just, ugh.
The Digivolution is up and running. Did you see? Did you hear? Did you know what's coming? A Digi-Destiny starts today. Let me hear you say.
You know you're watching a show from almost 20 years ago when it kicks off with a rap song. I mean, it's a totally garbage song, but it never fails to fill me to the brim with filthy nostalgia juice. Did I mention that this movie's almost 20 years old yet? Jesus Christ. So, the movie kicks off with a prequel story that shows us how Tai and Kari were first introduced to the digital world. A Digi-Egg births itself from the family computer and hatches into what I think is supposed to be Bodemon, but really it just looks like a Pac-Man ghost after Pac-Man ate the cherry. What ensues is a ton of horrible and god-awful jokes and puns that we can thank Fox Kids for before Bodemon digivolves into Koromon. I should mention now that this portion of the movie is actually a very edited version of a short that was released in Japan called Digimon Adventure that actually served as the TV show's pilot. This thing has a tendency to Harvey Weinstein Tai and Kari's faces, as well as shitting on the floor more than once, which even as a kid made me second guess how great it would be to have a Digimon. I mean, look at poor Kari here. I mean, she looks like she's having a fucking Vietnam flashback. Also, fat boy slim bruh. I'll talk about the soundtrack later. Koromon eventually ends up digivolving into a roided up version of Agumon who proceeds to destroy not only Tai's house, but also goes on a rampage through Tokyo. I'll admit, as lame as almost all the jokes in this movie are, this one...
Did you see that?
No, I was sleeping.
But you're driving!
That one always got a chuckle out of me. A giant-ass bird shows up, which is never explicitly named in the movie, but is actually called Parrotmon, which I'm sure you never could have guessed by looking at the bastard. And this is where things really kick off and get damn good. Greymon shows up in probably one of the coolest reveals ever.
I'm Greymon now.
You can be whoever you want, big guy.
And gets in like a massive kaiju-sized battle with Parrotmon. But as all this is happening, all I could think to myself was later when Kari says this line.
That night changed our lives. It was a while before we realized that those of us who saw what happened became the Digi-Destined.
Those of you who saw what happened. Two giant motherfucking monsters were attacking each other in the middle of downtown Tokyo. Shit was blowing up, buildings were being mortared. I mean, shouldn't all of Tokyo been Digi-Destined at that point? Who the hell didn't see all this happening? Or is it that all the Japanese people were like, oh great, another giant monster fight outside for the 5th time this week. If we just ignore it, it'll go away. From here, the movie jumps ahead 4 years to a now teenage group of our central characters. While the movie says this is a 4-year jump for the sake of the movie having a continuous story, this is actually a completely different movie. In Japan, it was released as a 45-minute film called Digimon Adventure, Our War Game. Izzy comes across a virus Digimon who is systematically destroying the world's internet. Izzy and Tai get together to hatch a plan to destroy this evil Digimon before it ends the world. Meanwhile, and more importantly, Tai's mom keeps coming up with twisted, torturous recipes to force upon these young lads. One of which is a beef jerky shake, which I actually googled to see if it was a real thing, and this is all I could find. Where the hell this shake is actually from, I have no idea, but considering the one in the movie gave Izzy an explosive shit attack at one point, I don't think I'd dare touch it. Finally, our Digimon friendos show up, and... what the fuck is Gatomon doing? It's okay, she's just slow. This entire portion of the movie is incredibly dated, which is one of the most nostalgic parts about it to me. Anyone born just a few years after this movie came out will never really experience the dark ages of dial-up, when sneaking onto your PC at night to look at porn as a teenager graced you with this sound. And woke up everyone in the fucking house. Or the fact that losing your phone connection meant losing your internet connection too. Or that loading a single picture took like 10 minutes. The fact that the world is able to live stream the Digimon fighting online is total bullshit. Hell, one of the movie's major plot points wouldn't exist in today's tech age at all. War Greymon and Metal Garurumon being slowed down by the massive influx of emails only happens because dial-up was the equivalent of waterboard torture. One thing that always annoyed me was just how much trouble Tai was having trying to gather all the other Digidestined together to fight this virus. I mean, yeah, he keeps trying to call everybody, but not one single time does he actually tell them what's going on. I'm pretty sure if you just left a message saying, "Hey guys, a fucking evil Digimon is destroying the internet, get over here now," I'm pretty sure everybody would hustle. But now he's all like, "Oh, Sora's mad at me." God. The stakes in this portion of the movie are actually pretty high. The evil Digimon finds its way into the US military system and launches 2 nuclear missiles, one towards the US and one towards Japan. It's not often a kid's movie uses nuclear annihilation as a plot device, but hey, I mean, I ain't complaining. All they have to do is duck and cover, they'll be fine. I should mention that in the Japanese version of this movie, there is never any mention of a missile being launched at the US because Willis isn't even mentioned in that movie. Before we move on, I should probably mention the Digimon movie's soundtrack, because this movie just loves to pimp it out every chance it gets. And you know what? I love it. As a kid, I had it on cassette tape as well as on CD, and I can't tell you how many times I just spend all night listening to every song on repeat. Unlike the Pokemon movies, which used a lot of pop music, this movie was pretty much all punk rock, and as a kid, I mean, that was just so awesome.
Just about
Finished! It can't end like this!
Now, anyone who had VHS tapes can tell you that when a certain scene is watched repeatedly, eventually the tape starts to deteriorate. You know those staticky white noise lines that VHS was famous for? Yeah, well, there's one scene in this movie that even to today, I still think is incredible. After War Greymon and Metal Garurumon get their asses kicked by the thousands of Diaboromon clones that are taking over the net, Tai and Matt enter the digital world, and by using the power of everyone's emails, well, I mean, just see for yourself.
War Greymon! Part Metal Garurumon! They digivolved together to become...
Omnimon!
Oh, it's just so good. Now I wish I could say that it ended here, but it doesn't. After Diaboromon's defeat, we jump ahead again a few more years to not only a different cast of characters, but also to a completely different art style. One of the things I loved so much about the first half of this movie is that they were done by one of the best anime directors working in the industry, Mamoru Hosoda. Even if you don't know his name, you know his films. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Wolf Children, Mirai. The guy's a legend. His work is instantly recognizable, which is why it's so jarring when we suddenly switch to the next half of Digimon. Now, I mean, I don't hate the last half of this movie, but the issue here is that I was starting to outgrow Digimon when Season 2 started, so I never really cared much for these characters. Willis, the American kid that the past 2 stories have been hinting at, finally shows up here. One of his Digimon, Kokomon, was consumed by a virus that turns him into a mutated version of his champion form, who continuously stalks Willis and Kokomon's brother, Terriermon. Compared to the intensity of the first half of the movie, I feel like this section is just fairly lackluster and not quite as interesting. I know some Season 2 purists are going to come out with their pitchforks ready, but like I said, I just didn't grow up with Season 2. In Japan, you can see all 3 portions of the original versions in high definition, but not our version. Why this film has never had an HD Blu-ray release is beyond me, and it's criminal. I mean, for God's sake, the DVD isn't even in widescreen. Come on, Fox, get on it. If you're looking at the movie objectively, I mean, it's not very good. It's loaded with pacing issues and terrible jokes and really cheesy dialogue, but my pure nostalgic love for this movie, it just really totally trumps all those problems. Obviously, I know that the original Japanese versions are a million times better as movies, but I will always have a special place in my heart for our Digimon movie.